Hey everybody, welcome to a special 30-minute edition of NoDQ&A video. As I promised, if ZZ remained in the Tough Enough competition, which he did, and not only did he survive, but he was not even in the bottom three. So there you have it. ZZ's still in it, and here's what I'm going to do. For every week that ZZ remains in the competition, I will do a 30-minute NoDQ&A video following Tough Enough. Keep voting. If he does end up in the bottom three, vote for ZZ. Hashtag Tough Enough ZZ. But enough of that. Let's get to your questions here from twitter.com/AaronRift. You can tweet me there with your questions and use the hashtag NoDQ. You can use hashtag Talk Wrestling to submit questions for Jeff Meacham. And you can use hashtag The Scoop for questions to Noah Donish. First question here today. What do you think about the rumor that WWE will be introducing Divas tag team titles, and do you think that this is a good idea? I think it's a good idea if WWE continues to push the Divas division. My fear is that they'll introduce new titles and then 6 months down the line, they will be giving up on the Divas division again, and it will be a waste of time. But I do feel that by introducing Divas tag team titles, it will force WWE to make a commitment, at least in the short term. And right now you have 2 Divas matches on Raw every week. So you can have one match, a singles match, and the other match be a tag team match. I'm fine with the idea. I think it would be a good way to really tell people that you're serious about pushing the Divas division again. And WWE brought in more Divas. The Divas roster is the fullest it's been in a long time. So why not? I'm all for it as long as WWE continues to actually push the Divas division and take it seriously. And I got this question here from Isaac Rahman. Hey Aaron, if the WWE and US titles end up unified at SummerSlam, will that undo everything Cena did for the US title? Yeah, it would, but I think that it's unlikely they'll just flat out unify the US and WWE titles unless the rumor is true about the Divas title being introduced, the Divas tag team titles. I feel that by adding the Divas tag team titles, the one downside is there'll be too many titles in WWE. And I really don't see the need for 2 mid-card singles titles, which is what the US title and the IC title have been for years. It would erase everything John Cena has done to build up the title only to unify it after all that work Cena's done. But I think if you are going to have the Divas titles, the Divas tag team titles, then it would be something to at least take under consideration. But I think it's unlikely that happens. I think that what will happen is if Rollins wins, they'll just they'll make the US title vacant and do a tournament or whatever. And then, of course, if Cena wins, he'll probably be the dual champion defending both titles and being Mr. Superman, whatever. But I would be surprised if they just flat out got rid of the US title after SummerSlam. All right, this one comes from @VaderIBA1977. Did Eric Bischoff really come up with the Elimination Chamber concept, and was he part of creative or just an on-screen character in WWE? Eric Bischoff was merely just a television character. He was not part of the creative process in WWE. He had nothing to do with the Elimination Chamber concept. It was merely the Eric Bischoff TV character coming up with that idea. Vince McMahon was always a big fan of Eric Bischoff as a TV performer, and I think that was a major reason why Vince wanted Eric Bischoff in WWE, because he was such a big fan of that Eric Bischoff character. All right, moving on here, I got this question from @RabbitMike97. Do you think Mike Tenay will ever come to WWE? Probably not. If Mike Tenay was going to be in WWE, I think it would have happened well over a decade ago. When WCW went under, WWE had the opportunity to bring in Mike Tenay, and they chose not to. And to me, that speaks volumes, that they really had no interest in him. And WWE, you have to keep in mind, is always youth-oriented, not just with the in-ring talent, but with the announcers as well. And that was a major factor in Jim Ross being phased out, and a factor in why Jerry Lawler has slowly been phased out is WWE wants younger announcers at the booth. Mike Tenay, older guy, I don't think WWE would invest in him and have him part of the company at his age. If he was 20 years younger, then maybe. But also Mike Tenay is very old school and associated with old school pro wrestling. And just the fact that he's been with TNA for so many years, you know, he has an association with TNA. And I don't think WWE would sign him. All right, this one comes from @NC Shady. Hey Aaron, first-time asker and long-time viewer. Are you happy that Matt Hardy has been getting a push for the TNA World title? I'm not sure happy would be the word. I think the word would be indifferent. I really don't care who's being pushed in TNA at this point because it doesn't really matter who's getting pushed. TNA is in a certain position, and that's the way they are going to remain in. Honestly, I'd rather see a younger star be pushed, but we're beyond that at this point. I think the ship has sailed. I really don't see any upward mobility for TNA. And because of that, I really don't care who gets pushed. Push Matt Hardy. Push any number of people in TNA. Push Mr. Kennedy again, Mr. Anderson, whatever. They can push whoever they want. Doesn't really matter to me. But I'll say good for Matt Hardy. He's got a family. And the more TV time he gets and the higher position he's in, better for him and his family. So good for Matt Hardy. All right, this one comes from @MrPanda316. Please answer in video, who should induct Sting into the Hall of Fame? I was thinking either Kevin Nash or Booker T. I would go with Ric Flair. If Ric Flair is in the right frame of mind to do it, I would have Ric Flair induct Sting. Makes sense to me. Ric Flair and Sting were like peanut butter and jelly in WCW. They had so many matches and feuds against each other. If Hulk Hogan wasn't in the trouble that he's in, I would have gone with Hogan as another choice. But yeah, I really do feel that Ric Flair is your best bet, or a current WWE star who grew up on Sting and was influenced by Sting. Maybe John Cena would be a good choice. You know, any number of people in WWE that really looked up to Sting and patterned their careers after Sting. Those would be good choices as well. All right, this one comes from Carl @Scoo Trolling. Why did WWE even make it so we have to choose who wins Tough Enough if they are trying so hard to manipulate us? WWE wants you to feel like you're part of the process and your opinion matters when really it doesn't. WWE, they are masters at manipulation, and they will do whatever it takes to work things into their favor. But they want you to believe that you're making a difference when you're really not. And I said this before about Tough Enough. Really doesn't matter who wins. WWE is going to give a deal to whoever they want, whoever they feel is the most marketable. And Vince has always said that he doesn't believe the fans know what they want at times, and he has to decide for them what's best for them. So you can vote all you want, and that's why I say vote for ZZ, because it doesn't really matter. If ZZ wins, WWE's not going to do anything with him. If he comes in 6th place, WWE's not going to do anything with him. They're going to push who they want to push regardless of the votes. So we might as well have fun with it. We might as well just vote for ZZ. Makes for more entertaining train wreck television. I'm more interested in Tough Enough now because of this whole situation, all these reports about WWE not wanting to have ZZ win and they're trying to get him voted off. I say vote for him. I say make the show entertaining. We can at least make it more entertaining than it is by voting for the person that WWE does not want to win the competition. All right, this one comes from @WHW6. Hey Aaron, I know most arenas physically cannot handle war games, but do you think WWE will use this match in the future if they can? I've gotten the question about war games every now and then, and my answer is the same. If WWE was going to bring back War Games, I think they would have done it already. Vince has never really been a fan of using other people's ideas and using ideas for WCW. At least he won't make it so obvious. If he steals people's ideas, he'll try to hide it and act like he's not really stealing somebody's ideas when in fact he is. Now, perhaps one day with Triple H in charge. I mean, Triple H is a big fan of the old school WCW and NWA. He was a big fan of the Horsemen and the War Games that first started in the late 80s in the NWA. I think it's possible if Triple H has enough power and influence, maybe one day we will see War Games. But as long as Vince has the final say, I think the odds are very much against it. I think it would have been brought back already if Vince really wanted to bring it back. All right, this one comes from Larry Arrowwood. What is the most underrated WrestleMania? I would pick WrestleMania 8 and WrestleMania 21. I do agree with you about WrestleMania 21. I was there in person for that, and I think that the card up until the last 3 matches was one of the best that WWE ever produced. The undercard was really strong for that WrestleMania, but unfortunately, people tend to judge a pay-per-view event based off of the last few matches or the main event matches, and unfortunately, WrestleMania 21 kind of fell off the cliff at the end. You had Big Show and Akibono, which was just bad. You had JBL and John Cena, which I was actually falling asleep in the arena during that match. I was really bored with it. It felt like just your average SmackDown match. And the main event, Triple H and Batista, I thought was okay, but I didn't feel it was their best effort. And the Hell in a Cell match 2 months later, I thought was far superior. But because of the fact that people judge the pay-per-view based off of the main event matches, I would say WrestleMania 21 is underrated because up until those last 3 matches, in my opinion, it was one of the best WrestleManias ever. And WrestleMania 8 also, because of the fact that you had matches like Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper on the undercard, that was a tremendous match. I've talked about it before. One WrestleMania I would like to mention, and I don't know if a lot of people will agree with me on this or not, because at the time it was considered to be one of the worst pay-per-views ever, is WrestleMania 4. I really enjoyed WrestleMania 4. I liked the storyline with Randy Savage having to compete 4 times in one night to win the WWE title. I liked the Battle Royal with Bret Hart breaking Bad News Brown's trophy. And I just enjoyed the characters on that show. The matches, yeah, there wasn't a lot of good wrestling on this show, actually a lot of bad wrestling, but there were some good matches as well. I thought that Ricky Steamboat versus Greg Valentine was a good match, and there were a few other ones. Savage's matches were good. I feel that WrestleMania 4 doesn't get enough love from people, and it's largely forgotten about. But I would say WrestleMania 4 is underrated. All right, this one comes from Just Bob. Who is the best at talking in TNA? Right now, I would actually say a guy who has not really been fully established in TNA, and that's Eli Drake. I'm actually really impressed with his mic work, and I think he has a lot of potential to go far in the wrestling business. I don't know how far he'll go in TNA, but I think that guy has something, and I think he's been doing really well. Drew Galloway's been doing really well. Ethan Carter III's been doing good on the mic. There have been some good talkers in TNA as of late, but unfortunately, there's not that much good material for them to work with. One could imagine if these guys were given some really strong material, how far they'd be able to go with it. And I think all those guys would do well if they had the right material to work with. So there you go, me bashing TNA yet again. I'm sure you're all thrilled about that. All right, this one comes from Al Aries. What's good, Aaron? Huge fan from Jersey. With James Storm now leaving TNA, what do you think are the chances he would come to WWE? I think the odds are against it for 2 reasons. Number 1 is his age, and number 2 is the fact that he is very strongly associated with TNA. And like Mike Tenay, I think that works against him. Now, I'm sure some of you out there will say, well, WWE brought in Samoa Joe. But I said this before, I'll say it again. There are always exceptions to the rule. Samoa Joe's a guy who Triple H has been very high on for a long time. And Samoa Joe has a lot of friends in WWE, and going back years to UPW, he worked with guys like John Cena. Samoa Joe, I think he had the right connections, and he's got a very strong reputation, and that's why he was given a chance. James Storm, maybe, but I think WWE for the most part is trying to avoid bringing in as many TNA stars as possible. So as much as I think it would work out for James Storm, I just don't see WWE bringing in too many people from TNA. I mean, they passed on AJ Styles, and that shocked a lot of people. They passed on Daniels, they passed on Kazarian, even though he did have a brief run in WWE. James Storm hasn't had any real association with WWE, so it would surprise me if they brought him in. All right, this one comes from Paul Tyne0703. Do you think Rhino will return to the main roster? I think Rhino is more of a possibility than James Storm because Rhino was a former WWE and ECW star. He was in TNA, but not for a real long period of time. I could see them maybe bringing him back for a short run. I don't think they're going to invest anything into him long term. I think that they're happy with him just being a veteran that can work with some of the younger talent on NXT. Beyond making a possible occasional appearance in WWE on Raw or whatever, I don't see him coming back and being a regular fixture on the main WWE roster. That I don't see happening. All right, this one comes from ITZ. First time asking, does Booker T getting buried by Triple H at WrestleMania 19 overshadow the entire show? Not at all, because it wasn't so much him getting buried, it was just the whole concept of the match and the fact that Booker T really wasn't built up as a very credible challenger to Triple H. And there were so many other matches that I felt personally were more intriguing and more interesting. You had Hogan versus Vince. You had Angle versus Lesnar. You had Rock versus Austin. You had Jericho versus Shawn Michaels. All those matches I felt I was more emotionally invested in than Booker T and Triple H. So if anything, all those matches very easily overshadowed Booker T and Triple H. All right, this one comes from Mark Saints. Should Undertaker's son Gunner follow his footsteps and become a wrestler too? Your thoughts are appreciated. R.I.P. Hot Rod, he adds. That's entirely up to him. If he wants to get into wrestling, then go for it. It would be easier for him in a sense that he would have a foot in the door, but on the other hand, he would have some very big shoes to fill. It's a double-edged sword when you're the son of a famous wrestler. Sometimes it works out for you, but other times the expectations are just too high. That's entirely up to him. If that's something that he's passionate about, then he should pursue it. If he's not passionate about it, then he should do something else. All right, this one comes from Ethan Jane Hanley. Hey, Aaron, long-time viewer, first-time asker. Do you think we will ever see a Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton feud? Been subscribed since episode number 300. Absolutely, because there's nothing but time. Eventually, their paths are going to cross. And you have to remember back in the 90s, it took about 7 years until Shawn Michaels and Undertaker finally crossed paths in WWE. So as long as both of them remain in WWE, and I expect both of them will be around for the long haul, eventually we will get a Bray Wyatt versus Randy Orton feud. And you'll probably regret asking about that after they do 10 straight pay-per-view matches or 50 matches on television over the course of a year. You'll probably be saying, why did I ask him that question? Why did I even bring it up in the first place? All right, this one comes from @TheLastLulu. Hey, Aaron, what do you think about a future main event for the Divas title between Lana, WWE, and Ronda Rousey? I think that you're going to have to do an awful lot with Lana for that match to even be a possibility. And let's face it, if WWE is able to acquire the services of Ronda Rousey, they're not going to put her in there with Lana. Lana isn't even being pushed that strongly in WWE right now. I would say the odds are slim to none. Highly unlikely in all likelihood. If Ronda Rousey comes in for a WWE match, they're probably going to put her in there with Stephanie. they're going to want to have the biggest marquee match possible. And Stephanie, even though she's not a regular in-ring performer, she's the biggest female superstar in the company. Let's face it, even though she's not officially a diva and wrestling on television, she's one of the stars of the company. She's a McMahon. That's the match that they would do. That's the money match. Ronda Rousey and Stephanie, whether it's a singles match or a tag team match, that's what they would go with. All right, this one comes from Jeff W. May 3rd, 89 is his Twitter handle. Hey Aaron, is this possible to answer in video? Do you think at some point WWE should do away with gimmick pay-per-views, especially ones like Hell in a Cell? I've talked about this before. I have been wanting for years now for WWE to get rid of the gimmick pay-per-views. I feel it's not necessary. I feel it forces you to do a stipulation match with no good storyline reasoning behind doing it. You're just doing a stipulation match out of necessity because the pay-per-view is named after the stipulation, like Hell in a Cell. I would rather you have a good storyline reason to do Hell in a Cell instead of just, oh, we got Hell in a Cell pay-per-view coming up. We have to have our mandatory Hell in a Cell match. So yeah, I feel WWE should absolutely get rid of the gimmick pay-per-views, but they haven't done it, and it doesn't look like they're going to do it anytime soon. All right, this one comes from Big Ryan. Just saw the video about the great teams in WWE history. Who do you think were the greatest in WCW? I would say Harlem Heat. Definitely in terms of homegrown WCW tag teams, Harlem Heat would be at the top of the list of greatest WCW tag team champions. And of course, the Steiner brothers. Steiners were one of the best tag teams in the history of WCW. And, they had their first run during the end of the Jim Crockett era into the Ted Turner era. And then later on, when they came back during the Monday Night Wars, the Outsiders, Hall and Nash, and you could also say LOD, Road Warriors. There were a lot of great teams in WCW. Even the Nasty Boys I would put in that category. I mean, they were on top in WCW for several years. All right, this one comes from Jared J. Smith. Hey Aaron, was there ever any WCW pay-per-view you enjoyed without any bad booking? Mine would be Slamboree 1994. A WCW pay-per-view without bad booking. That is a really difficult question to answer. I don't know if there was any WCW pay-per-view without some kind of bad booking. But the best WCW pay-per-views that I could recall: Spring Stampede '94, Bash at the Beach '96. You had a really strong undercard. I don't remember any real bad booking on that show. And the main event, of course, when WCW screwed up the most, it was during the main events. With their terrible booking. But that was the Hulk Hogan heel turn, and that was amazing. So I would say Bash at the Beach '96, and Great American Bash the month before was really strong as well. All right, this one comes from Derek. Hey Aaron, what WCW pay-per-views would you recommend to check out on the WWE Network? Please answer in video. Well, I just mentioned Spring Stampede '94. Bash at the Beach '96, Great American Bash '96, also Bash at the Beach '97, really strong undercard, and then you had the main event, which was better than people were expecting. Hogan and Rodman versus Luger and the Giant. That was a really strong pay-per-view, and Spring Stampede '99 was the real last, I thought, good WCW pay-per-view, so you can check out that one as well. All right, this one comes from Tyler R. Doza. What do you think of Dana White's comments about the WWE? Well, I can totally understand why people got upset about his comments, especially people in the business that are offended when people throw around the term fake. I think it was a poor choice of words by Dana White. I don't think he should have just used the word fake. I could see why that offends people. I do feel some people did blow it out of proportion. I think Dana White likes to screw with people on Twitter and push people's buttons, and that's exactly what he did. And I think people just need to not get offended over every little comment that's made online. It's not like people are going to boycott UFC, and Jeremy Borash was saying he was not going to watch UFC. I mean, I think he was just trying to draw attention to himself at that point and give himself publicity and get his name out there. I think people did overreact a little bit to it, but I could totally understand why people did get offended by it. All right, this one comes from @CapitalSafe716. With the debacle of the NWO in the end of their run, how would you have built them after '96? Keep up the great work. Well, I think that it would have been better if once Sting beat Hulk Hogan at Starrcade, it shouldn't have been that debacle with Nick Patrick in the slow count. Sting should have beaten Hulk Hogan decisively, and you could have done the split angle with the NWO Wolfpack and the black and the white. I mean, that was a good way to extend the NWO, but when they brought it back at the start of '99, that was a mistake. It should have been done. The NWO should have been ended in a decisive manner. Like when Flair beat Bischoff, it should have been a storyline where Flair won, the NWO was disbanded. Not just Flair becoming president, but the NWO was done. That really should have been the end of the NWO. Bringing it back in '99, I mean, that really reeked of desperation, and the numbers started falling at that point. So I would have just dropped it after '98, and Sting would have beaten Hogan very, very cleanly and without any controversy, and a match would have ended where WCW decisively beat the NWO and ran them off once and for all. All right, next question here. Hey, Aaron, do you think that a woman's Money in the Bank match would be good, and would you support it? Thanks from England. I think that would be an interesting idea if the WWE is still strongly pushing the Divas division come the next Money in the Bank pay-per-view. If they are, then I would definitely support the idea. You could have the male Money in the Bank match, and then you could have the Divas Money in the Bank match. And if you have enough talented divas in there, I think you would have a decent chance to be successful. It's certainly worth taking the risk. If WWE a year from now is still pushing the Divas division strongly, then I would go with it. I would do it. And if WWE is going to bring in Divas tag team titles, then that would be another step as well, to do a Divas Money in the Bank match. If the women can go out there and perform at the same level as the men, then eventually you could do these matches. You could do a Money in the Bank. You could even do a women's Hell in a Cell match. I don't know if WWE would ever do that. It is PG after all, and I don't know if WWE would do a match that violent with the women, but who knows? Maybe it will happen one day. But yeah, a Money in the Bank match, I would definitely support it if WWE keeps pushing the Divas division, and it's going to be pushed for the long haul. All right, got this next question here from Kerr Miller. In your opinion, what was the better match? Steamboat versus Savage or Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon? In my opinion, I go with Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels. That's a really hard question to answer. That's like saying, what do I prefer, hamburgers or pizza? They're both different in the sense that Steamboat and Savage was a straight-up wrestling match. Michaels and Razor Ramon was a ladder match, a gimmick match. I think in terms of just more high-impact spots, I would go with Michaels and Razor Ramon. But Savage and Steamboat, I mean, it was a match that really changed the industry and influenced so many people. It's really hard to say. I don't think I could pick one that I prefer over the other. I mean, both of them are two of the greatest singles matches of all time and two of the most influential matches. I mean, Steamboat and Savage was very fast paced, and you see that style more and more as the years progress. And with Michaels and Ramon, they set the standard for the ladder matches, and the ladder matches evolved with the Hardys and Edge and Christian, the Dudleys, and both matches really influenced a lot of people and really changed the game. So it's really hard to pick one over the other. All right, last question here comes from M Johnson 276. Hey Aaron, do you think divas like Deborah, Ivory, Jackie, Tori, Luna, Chyna, Terry, and the Cat will go into the Hall of Fame? That's a lot of names, and I think eventually we'll see a few more divas go into the WWE Hall of Fame. I don't think a lot of them are going to end up in the Hall of Fame. Chyna, I think is the most deserving of the people on that list, but we all know her situation with WWE. Jackie, Tori, Terry. I think it's unlikely they go in. The Cat, I think, is unlikely. Deborah, maybe, but besides coming out and everyone yelling out puppies, she didn't really get all that involved in the in-ring performances in WWE. She was mainly just a valet, and she didn't really have that long of a run in WWE. So yeah, I think of all the names on that list, Chyna is your best candidate, and WWE has no intentions on inducting her anytime soon. So, I'd be surprised if any of them went in anytime in the near future, but perhaps down the line. You know what? Luna, because of her family, I think, and because she was in the business for a long time, I think she would be a fairly decent candidate eventually to go into the Hall of Fame. All right, so that'll wrap it up for this 30-minute edition of NoDQ&A video. If you enjoyed the video, please share it. I spent 30 minutes answering your questions here. If you enjoyed the video, please share it with a friend on Facebook, Twitter. Send a link to anybody you know who watches wrestling. Have them check out the video. Stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest regarding WWE SummerSlam and what's going on with TNA as well. And on that note, I will see you guys next time for another edition of NoDQ&A video. Thanks for watching.